11 minutes. That's all that separated Egypt from the greatest victory in its football history, and Argentina from one of the most shocking eliminations the World Cup has ever seen. With just 11 minutes remaining, the defending world champions weren't simply struggling, they were collapsing. Argentina were trailing by 2 goals. Lionel Messi had already missed a penalty. The Egyptian goalkeeper was producing the performance of his life, and millions of football fans around the world were preparing themselves to witness what seemed impossible. A new chapter in football history. But then, everything changed. Not because of a breathtaking goal, not because of a tactical masterclass, but because of one VAR review that instantly divided the football world. To some people, it was simply the correct decision according to the laws of the game. To others, it was the moment Egypt's dream was stolen. The internet exploded. Former players questioned the consistency. Fans flooded social media accusing FIFA of protecting its biggest superstar. And Egypt's manager, Hossam Hassan, walked into the post-match press conference looking like a man who had completely lost faith in the system. His words immediately made headlines. He didn't hide his emotions. He didn't choose diplomacy. Instead, he questioned whether football was truly being decided on the pitch anymore, whether you agree with him or not. One thing is undeniable. This match has become one of the most controversial knockout games in recent World Cup history. So, what really happened in Atlanta? Was Egypt genuinely robbed? Did VAR simply apply the laws correctly? Or did football witness another night where tiny decisions changed the destiny of an entire nation? Let's go back to the beginning. Because before anyone talks about controversy, before anyone talks about referees, before anyone talks about Messi, you have to understand what Egypt had already achieved. Coming into this tournament, almost nobody gave them a chance. Most predictions had them leaving in the group stage. Many believed they simply didn't have enough quality to compete with the world's elite. But game after game, Egypt proved everyone wrong. They defended with discipline. They played without fear, and most importantly, they played like a team with absolutely nothing to lose. Every round they survived increased their confidence. Every victory strengthened their belief. By the time they arrived in Atlanta to face the reigning world champions, the pressure wasn't on Egypt. It was entirely on Argentina. Because for Lionel Messi, this wasn't just another World Cup match. At 39 years old, everyone knew this could be the final chapter of one of the greatest careers football has ever seen. The expectations were enormous. Millions expected another magical performance. Instead, the opening minutes became a nightmare. Egypt refused to sit back. They pressed aggressively. They challenged every loose ball. They matched Argentina physically. And perhaps most surprisingly, they looked completely unfazed by Messi's presence. Within the opening stages, the breakthrough arrived. A perfectly delivered corner found Yasser Ibrahim, who powered an unstoppable header beyond Emiliano Martinez. The stadium fell silent. The Egyptian bench erupted. Argentina looked stunned. For the first time in the tournament, the defending champions looked genuinely vulnerable, and things were about to get even worse. For Argentina, conceding first was already a disaster. But what happened next threatened to become one of the darkest nights in the country's football history. Knowing they had to respond immediately, Argentina pushed forward with urgency. Every attack went through Lionel Messi. Every dangerous move seemed to end at the feet of the greatest player of his generation. Then, the opportunity arrived. An Argentine attacker burst into the penalty area chasing a loose ball before going down under pressure from an Egyptian defender. Without hesitation, the referee pointed straight to the penalty spot. Half the stadium celebrated. The other half exploded in disbelief. The replay immediately divided opinion. Some believed the defender clearly clipped the attacker's leg. Others argued the contact was simply part of 2 players sprinting shoulder to shoulder at full speed. According to IFAB's laws of the game, if a defender trips or attempts to trip an opponent carelessly inside the penalty area, a penalty is the correct decision. The referee believed exactly that. VAR reviewed the incident and chose not to intervene. The decision stood. Now the pressure shifted onto one man, Lionel Messi. Thousands of Argentine fans stood frozen. Millions watching around the world held their breath. This was the moment expected to change everything.
For a few unforgettable seconds, Egypt believed they had done it. Players were celebrating, fans were crying. Even the Argentine supporters looked completely stunned. The scoreboard read 2-0. The defending champions were on the brink of elimination. But then, the referee stopped everything. He placed a hand on his earpiece. No whistle, no explanation, just one familiar gesture, VAR. Immediately, confusion spread across the stadium. Nobody understood what was being reviewed. The goal itself looked perfectly legal. There was no offside, no handball, no foul near the penalty area. So what exactly were the officials looking at? Then the replay appeared. Not the finish. Not Salah's pass. Not Ziko's movement. Instead, the cameras jumped backwards through the attacking sequence. Back. Further back. Until they reached a seemingly ordinary challenge between Marwan Attia and Lisandro Martinez deep inside Egypt's own half. A slight pull, minimal contact, a clipped foot, nothing more. The The referee walked to the monitor. He watched it once, then again. Seconds later, his decision arrived. No goal. Just like that, the celebration stopped. The score returned to 1-0. The emotional swing inside the stadium was unbelievable. Egyptian players surrounded the referee immediately. Their captain desperately pleaded for an explanation. Hossam Hassan stood frozen on the touchline. Meanwhile, Argentina had been handed something even more valuable than a goal. They had been handed hope. To understand why this decision became so controversial, it's important to separate two different questions. The first question is simple. Could VAR legally review that incident? The answer is yes. Under IFAB's VAR protocol, officials are allowed to review fouls that occur during the attacking possession phase if that sequence directly leads to a goal. So from a procedural standpoint, the review itself was allowed. But that's where the second and much bigger question begins. Was that level of contact enough to erase an entire goal? This is where football fans completely split. One side argued that a foul is still a foul. If the attacker gained possession illegally, the goal cannot stand. The other side saw something entirely different. They believed football had become overly dependent on microscopic replays, that normal physical contact, something ignored dozens of times throughout every match, was suddenly being punished only because it produced a goal. That feeling of inconsistency became the real controversy because supporters weren't only asking whether the referee followed the rules, they were asking whether those same standards had been applied equally throughout the tournament. Social media exploded within minutes. Former referees disagreed. Pundits argued for hours. Slow-motion clips flooded every platform. Some insisted justice had been served. Others called it one of the harshest VAR interventions in World Cup history, but football rarely waits for debates to finish. The match restarted, and somehow, Egypt refused to collapse. Instead of losing confidence, they attacked again. Only minutes later, Mohamed Salah accelerated down the left wing once more. Argentina's defense struggled to recover. A low cross raced through the 6-yard box. Waiting once again, Mustafa Ziko. This time, there would be no review, no controversy, no delay. Just one clean finish, 2-0. For real. The Egyptian supporters erupted louder than ever. Now, there was no question. The underdogs were 11 minutes away from producing one of the biggest shocks the World Cup had ever seen. But champions don't become champions by accident. And with time running out, Argentina finally woke up. Not through luck, not through controversy, but through something every great team possesses, the refusal to accept defeat. For 79 minutes, Egypt had been living the dream. Now, they were entering survival mode. Argentina pushed every player forward. The pressure became relentless. Cross after cross flew into the penalty area. Every clearance immediately came back. Every loose ball belonged to Argentina. Then, the breakthrough finally arrived. Lionel Messi drifted away from the crowded center of the pitch and found space on the right-hand side. For most of the night, Egypt had successfully surrounded him whenever he touched the ball. Now, for the first time, he had room to breathe. Messi looked up, delivered a perfectly weighted cross. Christian Romero attacked it with absolute conviction. A powerful header, goal, 2-1. Suddenly, everything changed. The Egyptian players who had looked fearless for over an hour now looked exhausted. Argentina smelled vulnerability, the crowd sensed momentum, and football has a strange way of rewarding belief. Only a few minutes later, the ball bounced loose just inside the Egyptian penalty area. Out of everyone on the pitch, it landed at the feet of Lionel Messi. There are certain players you simply cannot give a second chance. Messi didn't hesitate. One touch, a perfectly struck half volley. Mustafa Shobier got both hands to it, but the power was simply too much. The ball crashed into the roof of the net. 2-2. The stadium exploded. Messi stood still for a moment before being surrounded by teammates. After one of the toughest nights of his tournament, the captain had delivered when Argentina needed him most. For Egypt, it felt like watching history slip through their fingers. But the cruelest moment was still waiting. Deep into stoppage time, Egypt launched one final attack. Mohamed Salah drove toward the penalty area looking for one last opportunity. He went to ground under pressure. The Egyptian players immediately appealed. They wanted a foul. The referee waved play on. Argentina broke forward instantly. Within seconds, the ball reached Lautaro Martinez. He lifted a dangerous cross into the box. Charging toward it was Enzo Fernandez. Header, goal. 3 goals in 13 minutes. From 2 goals behind to one of the greatest comebacks in World Cup history. The final whistle sounded. Argentina celebrated wildly. Egyptian players collapsed to the grass in disbelief. Some stared into the sky. Others buried their faces in their shirts. The emotion was overwhelming. But while Argentina celebrated, the controversy was only beginning. After the match, Egypt's manager, Hossam Hassan, made no attempt to hide his frustration. He openly criticized the officiating and questioned several of the key decisions that shaped the game. His comments immediately spread across international media and social platforms, fueling an already heated debate among football fans. Some believed Egypt had every right to feel aggrieved. Others argued that while certain decisions were harsh, they were still consistent with the written laws of the game. And that's what makes this match so unforgettable. Not because everyone agrees on what happened, but because almost nobody does. You can believe the disallowed goal was technically correct. You can also believe the overall officiating lacked consistency. Those two ideas can exist at the same time. What cannot be denied is how brilliantly Egypt played. For more than 70 minutes, they pushed the defending champions to the absolute limit. They defended with courage, they attacked without fear, and they came within touching distance of producing one of the greatest upsets football has ever seen. At the same time, Argentina reminded the world why champions are so difficult to eliminate, even after missing a penalty, even after trailing by 2 goals, even with their tournament hanging by a thread. They refused to stop believing. Sometimes, that's all football needs. One moment, one chance, one goal, and history changes forever. So now the question passes to you. Was this simply one of the greatest comebacks the World Cup has ever witnessed? Or will this always be remembered as a night filled with decisions that Egypt will never forget? Let me know your opinion in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of football's most dramatic nights, don't forget to subscribe for more match breakdowns, football stories, and behind-the-scenes analysis from the world's biggest tournaments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.